Hi, we are going to talk about reflections, which is another type of transformations of graphs. So reflections there are only two of them that we're going to talk about. If you put the negative in front of a function, so you negate the function itself, it's going to reflect the graph over the x-axis. If you negate the x, then the graph is going to reflect over the y-axis. And we're going to try to see how it's going to work with different graphs. So here are some examples. In this problem, example 1, you have to you're negating x squared. So our parent function is x squared, and you're negating the function itself. And then this is going to reflect the graph over the y-axis. So we're gonna flip this point stays here, this point here transfers here, this goes here, this point here to 4 becomes to negative 4, and negative 2 4 becomes negative 2 negative 4, and our graph is going to look like this. Now we're negating, so it's negative absolute value of x, for example, 2. The parent function is going to be absolute value of x. That's what this is. You're negating that, so it's going to flip it over the x-axis as well. And that's the graph. For example 3. You're negating x inside of the x squared. So what you have here, this is basically f of negative x. So that would be reflecting that about the y-axis. But here's an interesting thing about this graph. It is symmetric about the y-axis. So if I take the point that's on the y-axis stays. This point goes here, this point goes there, this point goes here, this point goes there. So in essence, what's going to happen is going to be exactly the same graph. So if you're trying to reflect a graph that is symmetric, the graph of a function that happens to be symmetric about the y-axis, and you're reflecting that about the y-axis, then it is going to stay the same. So let's write about the y-axis, and it's already there. This was about the x-axis, and this was about the x-axis. Here we have a negative in front of x squared, so this is negative f of x, and that's going to be reflecting the graph about the y-axis. We don't have a lot of points here that we can use, but that's what the graph's going to end up being. Okay, but an interesting thing about this graph is kind of unique, because this one's going to be exactly the same if you reflect it about the y-axis. But a proper transformation here is a reflection about the x-axis. Okay? Let me write this here to negative f of x, and this is also negative f of x. Okay? So negative square root of x. Now we have a graph that's not symmetric. It should be a little bit more interesting. So the parent function is square root of x right here. This means this is going to be negative f of x. This is going to be a reflection about the x-axis. And now this point stays here. This goes here. This point goes here. And our graph is going to look like that. But what about this graph? So this is where the negative x is inside the square root. This is actually f of negative x. And this graph is going to reflect about the y-axis. Okay, so now we're going to keep this point stays there. This point goes here, this point goes here. Now our graph looks like this kind of missed the point, but that's what it is. And just like with other transformations, you can have more than one, so you can actually have both reflections applied in the same problem. What we have here, we have negative outside and negative inside. This is negative f of negative x. So it's both about the x-axis okay. So when you reflect about the proper order is first you reflect it about the y-axis, so over here, and then you reflect it again. So the resulting graph is going to be this one. So now we're going to take a look at some random functions and see how it works to make it a little bit even better understandable. So this is negative f of x. This is the reflection about the x-axis. Well, let's see what's going to happen here. So this point here is going to reflect over and it's going to go there. This point here, for example, negative 2, 1 is going to become negative 2, negative 1. So all these points are just going to flip over. This part of the graph is going to be right there. You also have that part. Let's take a look. So this point here, negative 1, negative 2, it's going to flip over and it's going to become negative 1, 2. This one here, negative 0, negative 3, it's going to become 0, 3. This here is 1, negative 2, it's going to become 1, 2. What other points do we see here? We have 2, 1, it's going to become 2, negative 1. And then you are going to see a graph that looks like this. And this one here is f of negative x, so it's inside the function. This is going to be a reflection about the y-axis. Let's see, so this open circle here is going to flip over here. This point here is going to go there. This point here is going to go there. So pretty much the whole thing flips over. And you are going to see that part like that. With this one, this point here, 1, negative 1, negative 2 is going to become 1, negative 2. This one's going to stay there. This point here, 2, 1, is going to become negative 2, 1. And I think you're beginning to see this is going to go like that now. And that's how it is done. And I hope this helps.